Coming up next, The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy. Every Thursday from 4 p.m, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.
People are struggling to have conversations and connect with others that they don't completely agree with on every topic. And I think that's probably the biggest problem that we need to try and solve, is how after all this division and after all this separation do we end up bringing people together again, and what does unity really look like?
New Zealand faces some pretty big issues. First one is COVID and the aftermath. There's no getting away from that. Second is racial division. It's been ginned up and it's dangerous. Another issue that maybe people haven't got their head around yet is digital currency. What form does that take? Is it programmable? Will it be used to manipulate behaviour and patterns of behaviour? Those questions need to be asked and answered.
How can you have fair, open, democratic government by people who are appointed? It's a ridiculous idea. And if that idea is taken to its zenith, then this country is in real trouble, because democracy, one person, one vote, where every vote is of equal value, has got to be the foundation of a modern New Zealand.
What's true, what's not true, how our kids are to be educated. And, I have a great fear for the future. I think we know from history where this could end up.
This is The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy, right here on RCR.
Welcome to The Crunch on Reality Check Radio. I'm your host, Cam Slater, and this is the place we crunch the political issues and cut through all the politicians' spin. Got something different for you this week. First up is Gary Moller, who's back on the show to discuss my hair test results, what that means for me, and what the next steps are. Now, it's a bit of a journey, and it can be confronting at times, but I think it's important to share my health story so that you can all learn, so you can look after your own health. No one's going to look after you better than you. And of course, we'll have the mailbag to get your feedback, and then we'll close out the show with the favourite of all you listeners, Cam's buddies, and we'll see what they have to think about the exit from Parliament of Grant Robertson. Don't forget to send comments to inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
You're listening to The Crunch with Cam Slater, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.
Right, it's time to dive into the concerning situation involving the New Zealand Defence Force and their handling of COVID-19 vaccine mandates. It's a story that's not only raised eyebrows, but has also faced scrutiny in the courts. And the New Zealand Defence Force has lost, first in the High Court, and again when they appealed that judgment in the Court of Appeal. Now imagine serving in the military and dedicating your life to a cause only to find yourself dismissed because of your decision about a COVID-19 vaccine. And this is the reality for some members of the New Zealand Defence Force, and it's caused quite a stir. In a recent article at Newsroom, we learn about Bonnie, a 28-year-old medic at Burnham Army Camp, who was given her marching orders this month, one of 25 regular and special forces believed to have been discharged in the past 18 months for refusing the COVID vaccine. The court has already ruled against the Defence Force's mandatory retention reviews, calling them inconsistent with the Bill of Rights and unlawful. The Defence Force has been grappling with attrition problems, losing more than a third of its uniformed personnel in the past 3 years. And to address this, they've been offering sweeteners of up to $30,000 for some soldiers to stay. And yet at the same time, they've been quietly discharging personnel for not getting the COVID vaccine. It's nuts. But then again, this is the Defence Forces we're talking about. I mean, they don't have sayings like hurry up and wait for nothing. Lawyer Matthew Haig, who represented the personnel in the recent court case, expressed his disbelief at the situation, especially considering the critical shortage of personnel across the Navy, Air Force and Army. He questions why in 2024 the Defence Force is still subjecting its members to outdated mandates. Why indeed? And it's not just the court that's critical of the Defence Force's actions. Bonnie, who comes from a long line of military service, expresses her dismay at losing her career. She argues that personal health decisions should be protected by the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act and the laws that the Anzacs fought and died for. And I have to agree with you. Yet here's the Army ignoring the laws they are sworn to defend. Now, Bonnie's story is not unique. Others have read the writing on the wall and quit, while some continue to serve under the constant threat of discharge, despite the court's repeated criticism of the Defence Force's inflexibility on vaccination. Last week, the Court of Appeal ruled in favour of the uniformed personnel penalised for not being vaccinated, calling the Defence Force's measures inconsistent with the Bill of Rights and unlawful. Lawyer Matthew Haig again points out the extraordinary nature of trained military personnel being discharged on such outdated grounds. Now the Defence Force is under orders to reconsider its vaccination order and pause any future action taken under it. However, for individuals like Bonnie, it's too late. And as we reflect on this situation, it raises questions about the balance between individual rights and the collective responsibility of the military. How can the Defence Force ensure readiness without compromising the rights of its personnel? It's a complex issue and it requires careful consideration, but it seems the Defence Force is not considering anything, much less carefully, especially in light of the court's recent rulings. The military seems intransigent, unwilling to admit they were wrong, and continuing to victimise service people for their right to choose not to have medical treatments that have been proven to be neither safe nor effective. Finally, it rather begs the question of the legitimacy or otherwise of the former government. Their lockdowns were unlawful, the police vax mandates were unlawful, the Defence Force mandates were unlawful. A government that breaks its own laws is not a government at all. It is as unlawful as the laws they ignored. Luckily, we had an election last year and gave that unlawful lot the boot. Gary Moller is back with my hair test results. We're going to take a deep dive into what these results mean, how we can correct any issues, and what the next steps are. As I said before, I'm sharing this health journey with you all so you can see what a positive impact looking after your own health can be and the interest that you have in your own lives. Gary's itching to go and he joins me now. Welcome back to The Crunch, Gary. It's a pleasure to have you here. Last time we spoke, we were going to go and get a hair test to find out all the elements that are coming out of my body or not coming out of my body. And I thought it'd be an opportune time to update the listeners on what that showed and what that means for me, and tell you about some stuff that you recommended during the Christmas New Year break and the results of that. So it's a good pleasure to have you back on The Crunch.
Well, it's a real pleasure, Cam. I'd like to start by just asking you a question, getting your permission. The first thing is that, Cam, we are going to be talking about medical-related matters.
Yep.
And we may delve into some personal things.
Yep.
And you need to be comfortable with sharing this with the public, with your listeners.
Yep.
So I want your permission to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been pretty public about my journey of the recovery from my stroke and open about some of the medications and side effects and things like that. And I think it's important for listeners to understand the full picture so that they can, wonder about their own situation and start to question, whether or not they're on correct medications, or there's something that they can do that seems to be really simple to actually fix and correct a few things. So, yeah, I've got no problems at all sharing that information. I think that it's educational for the listeners, and I've got no secrets.
Of course, that's wonderful. And I just wanted to make sure that that's absolutely clear. And the other thing, Cam, which listeners need to be aware, is that we're talking about Cameron Slater, and where we're talking about perhaps the merits or whatever of changing medication, of perhaps introducing other therapies. For the listeners, I'm not expecting them to go and do the same for themselves.
No, each person has to do their own research, look up their own medications and consult a professional health practitioner to ensure that they're actually not endangering themselves.
That's right.
So, I'm whatever recommendations that you come up with here, Gary, I'll be sharing that with my GP. I've trained her nicely. She knows that I go and do these sorts of things, and we always work in conjunction with that. And I'm putting in place things to monitor as well. I've got one of those wrist blood pressure testing devices. I'm checking my blood pressure to see that there's any changes, and any changes that we make, I'm making sure I'm on top of that sort of thing. That's what people should do. They need to take an interest in their own health, because nobody else is going to do that. And if they don't do that, then they'll end up in an emergency situation, and you can't guarantee what the outcomes are going to be when it's an emergency situation.
Well, where shall we start? I think it's great we've clarified things. This test that we are discussing was done in December.
Yep. And
you've had a number of weeks where you have steadily and faithfully plugged away. An absolutely model patient, I must add. I'm delighted to hear that. Perhaps we should start with blood pressures. And how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay?
Well,
are you feeling well?
Yeah, I'm feeling fantastic. Just for the listeners' benefit, Gary recommended that I start making up his famous citrus peel drink. We'll explain why you suggested that, and that came out of the test results that we had, and there were some things that maybe we needed to cleanse or clean up. But I'll tell you what, over the New Year period, and especially in January, I've met up with a few people in person. They're saying, "Gee, Cam, what have you done? Like, your skin is looking really good. Your eyes are really bright. You look like you're full of energy," and all of this sort of thing. And so the only thing that I've done over that Christmas, New Year period is drink copious quantities of your citrus peel drink. And, when you told me to make this up, and I looked at the recipe and looked at the things that are required, I sat there and thought, oh, good grief, I'm a manly man. I'm not the kind of person who would suck on lemons or drink dandelion and milk thistle tea or lemon and ginger. I'm just not a green tea drink, none of that, right? But the drink was actually very pleasant. It's not bitter at all, even though it's got a whole lemon in it. And eating the lemon peel, which you suggested that I do as I drink through it and have a couple of slices a day of the lemon peel, was not unpleasant. It wasn't bitter. It was nice. And so, I kind of do it all the time, especially on the hot days at the moment here in Auckland, approaching 30 degrees. That drink and a slice of the lemon chilled in the fridge is just delightful and really tasty. And it's something that I've changed into my diet, and I think it's made huge improvements.
Well, here at Wellington, approaching 20 degrees, I must say I enjoy having one of those lemon drinks as well. Now,
I went the next step, and I bought the Sujon black currant powder.
Yes.
You know what? It's actually doesn't really taste. You think it might taste like Ribena. It doesn't. The lemon taste comes through more than the black currant taste. But I added the Sujon black currant into the mix. Now, I get bottled water. It's cheap as chips. You can buy 6 bottles for about $3 from the supermarket, or $3.50 if it's on something like that on special. And I just pour a litre and a half into a jug and put all the ingredients and mix all that up and everything, and leave it in the fridge overnight. before I start drinking it. So, it's working.
Okay.
I think it's working.
Cam, I haven't seen you for a couple of months now, and maybe it's the filter on the camera, but
No filters here.
You do look in definitely better health. I think perhaps a bit of the darkness under the eyes, I can't really see any. I think you're looking pretty good for a 55-year-old.
Yep.
The medication you're on.
Yep.
Can we just go over that?
Sure.
You're taking, essentially, it's focusing on cardiovascular, preventing stroke and heart attack.
Yep, these were the things that they prescribed after I had my stroke to get my blood pressure under control and those sorts of things. Yeah,
Yes.
and then of course I'm also doing 5-kilometer walks every day as well. So,
yes, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
You're a model patient, and I love your enthusiasm. Now,
well, I just want my health to be good, because if you don't have your health, well, you've got nothing.
I think you've heard me say this before, but let food be thy medicine, and body heal thyself.
Yeah.
And the medication you're on may be beneficial in managing whatever the condition is, but it is not going to cure anything. You are going to cure yourself, which is what you have been in the process of doing, which is wonderful. And ultimately, if you do the job right, you will be bringing the health and vitality in underneath the medication, and ultimately the need for the medication will decrease to the point where you, with the cooperation of your doctor, though ultimately you are the decision maker on this, you will be able to remove each medication one by one to the point where you are completely medication free and you just get on with life. Now, I'll make one point as well. You're in your mid-50s.
Yep.
Congratulations. Now, you are genetically programmed. This is your genes. Your genes are there to serve you faithfully until around about 110 years of age.
Yeah, so I'm halfway there.
Yeah, you're halfway there. Now, the question I want you to, the mental exercise is, what do you think about taking all of these drugs for the next half of your life?
Yeah, I'm not really keen on that, because you get side effects with these drugs, and I'm not sure for another, even if, let's just say another 20 years, right? Let's say I get another 20 years. I don't want to be taking this cocktail of drugs for another 20 years. I want to actually get those down to almost nothing.
Okay. Now, so all of the drugs you're on, and there's atorvastatin, metazirapine, clopidogrel, losartan, and chloroidine. Don't worry about the pronunciation. I just get completely tongue-tied with all of them. But basically, you're on those medications, and each one of them comes with a long list of side effects. If it is a relatively recent drug, it will have a shorter list of side effects.
Possibly.
Okay. Yeah, usually a lot shorter, because it takes 10 to 20 years of the drug being out on the market for us to truly know all of the side effects from them, because we're talking about human years as opposed to, say, rat years from those original lab studies. So it often is the case that an older drug will have a longer list than the new one. But don't be fooled. The new one, once you give it enough time, may have just as long a list.
Yep.
Now, if each drug has got, say, 20 different side effects, some serious, some minor. Hey, I don't think any of them are minor, by the way, but let's call them minor. If you then combine 4 or 5 drugs together, which have never had to be tested together before going on the market, they're only tested on their own, and you combine them all together, you would need a supercomputer to figure out all of the possible interactions, most of which are probably unknown.
Yeah, there's obvious ones, like the I can't say it either. The chlortalidone, for example, when they originally prescribed that for me, I ended up with swollen legs, calf muscles, feet, like twice the size of my normal feet. I said to the doctor, "What's going on here?" "Oh, I don't know." So I went and did some research, found out that edema is one of the major side effects of the chlortalidone, and then we reduced the dosage. The other side effect of that drug too was it made my gums grow up over my teeth, and that's very uncomfortable, very painful. And when you're on blood thinners as well, brushing your teeth becomes a bloodbath, normally. So I'm the one who did the research on that. We talked to my doctor and said, well, what are we going to do? We reduced it. Now that's gone back to normal. But if it's got that side effect, I don't want it in me, right? I want to get myself to a point where I can remove those drugs because of the obvious side effects. And then there's, as you say, the not obvious side effects that you may not be aware of until there's a catastrophe.
Yeah, and then there's all of the incomprehensible interactions where you layer one drug on top of another.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can never truly understand the impact of that. It's a very difficult thing. Cam, I can tell you that the best predictor for a long, healthy, productive life, particularly as we get older, is the absence of the need for medication.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you go and look at all the longevity studies, you can see there are certain common factors like their diet, their exercise, getting out into fresh air, a sense of belonging, being part of a community, having a purpose that is above oneself. Okay. Rather than being narcissistic, being outward looking, involved in their community, and so on and so on. Okay. So there are all of those, but one of the factors that is often overlooked, almost ignored, is that none of these people are on long-term medication. Okay? Because, for a start, they don't need it. Yeah. But they're usually living in parts of the world where they won't have access to it anyway. Okay, so that's a really, I've always found that really fascinating. And what highlighted that to me was health professionals who work in aged care, end of life. They know that if you take the patient off their medication, they live longer. Okay, so that often says something. If you want to end somebody's life a little bit sooner, you bump the meds up. Okay, you don't take them off it. So I want you to just sort of think about that for a while. So for the next 55 years of Cam Slater's life, I think we should get him to a point where he's so healthy that there's no need for any drugs. Okay?
Sounds good to me.
Now, I'm being very careful about how I'm saying this. I'm saying that we are going to remove the need, okay? It doesn't mean that you just throw the drugs away. Yeah. Okay.
But actually, I always said to the doctors, why do I need this drug? Yeah. Oh, well, if you don't take that, you'll die, or whatever. They give you a reason. So no, but what's the symptom? What we're only treating symptoms here. What's the underlying cause of this? And it's like my little enigma with potassium. I've seen endocrinologists, various different specialists. They all, have declared it to be NFI, which means they've got no effing idea what it is that's causing it. Well, that's not helpful. They just say keep taking supplements. Well, most people don't need to take supplements for potassium, so why do I? And that's the question that I have, and it's the riddle, the enigma that has defeated me thus far. Which is why I thought the hair test would be give us a good indicator.
Well, there is. So we've got Cam's hair tissue analysis on screen.
Yep.
I'm going to describe it a little bit.
Sure.
Now, first of all, we have what is called a reference range. In other words, a person in perfect health, and homeopaths understand this, is that if you've got perfect homeostasis within a cell, there cannot be the existence of disease, dysfunction.
Yep.
And when we look at hair tissue analyses of healthy people who are disease-free, their hair tissue test is more or less all of the nutrients like calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, and so on, are within what is called an ideal or reference range.
There's a balance, isn't there, that we've got to look towards. And then some of these things come in pairs, don't they? They work together.
Well, everything in the universe operates on yin-yang, black-white, hot, cold, positive, negative, male, female, conservative, liberal. If there's darkness, there must be light. If there's heat, there must be cold. And if you have too much of one and too little of another, you end up with imbalance and dysfunction. And let's think of like politics. If you have a political party that has 60% of the vote, you run the risk of a dictatorship.
Yes.
Whereas the perfect democracy is where they have 51% of the vote.
Yes.
And if you think also in, say, a relationship between two people, you don't want a very strong person and a very weak person. Otherwise, you end up with an abusive relationship. Now, we have the same right down to the atomic level. In fact, down to light, matter. If there is matter, there must be antimatter, even if we haven't found it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the rule of the universe. And by the way, if you want to destroy and confuse, what you do is, for example, you destroy the distinction between a man and a woman, for example, and this and that. But it's you can actually apply science to what is going on in society. It's very, very fascinating. Now, anyway, but we won't digress. So if we're looking at Cam's, and we are looking at Cam's hair tissue test, we can see he's only got a couple of nutrients that are within the reference range or within the ideal. And there are a number of ones which are outside of the ideal and are in fact too low or too high. Now, there's some fascinating things here. The pattern that I'm looking at, Cam, is in fact the pattern of somebody who is probably not eating much in the way of red meat. Okay, so that would be the first thing but we're looking at, this is historic. You may be eating red meat right now, but during the last year or so, it looks to me like you have been on a low red meat, probably low cholesterol diet. Okay.
Right. Yep.
Now, and that's because your iron is incredibly low, as is copper, manganese, zinc, chromium, and selenium. And when we look at those foods, look at those nutrients, and we look at the main, most bioavailable food sources, that is things like red meat and also other sources, organ meat and things like green lip mussels, clams, oysters, tuna, those sorts of things. Yeah, quite fascinating to see that. So that's the first observation.
So I should eat more black pudding then?
And have liver once a week.
Yeah,
absolutely. Lamb's thrive once a week would be absolutely amazing, wonderful. And have you been doing that, Cam?
No, I haven't, but I do like black pudding. So, perhaps I can get some black pudding and have that for breakfast or something.
Well, I had black pudding served up for dinner last night.
Oh, I love it.
And I had some of the leftover earlier today. Okay.
There's never any leftover of black pudding for me. Gary.
Well, maybe your reptilian subconscious brain is saying, I need it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's because you're so incredibly low.
Yeah.
Just to give readers Cam's iron is 0.6 when it should be around about 3.5.
Yep.
It doesn't go much lower. It's just about as low as it can go.
Yeah.
Maybe it's all those bleeding gums. Okay. Combined with a diet of, vegetable forms of iron are far less bioavailable than red meat, venison, black pudding, liver. Basically, the redder, the better. That would be a general rule of thumb for Cam Slater. Lots of red meat. And that will also provide copper. By the way, copper is found in green lip mussels.
Yeah.
That's the copper oxide is green, and mollusks, mussels, use copper instead of iron for oxygen transport and storage. So that's why they are a great source of copper. Okay, think of paua. Paua is so green it almost looks black, and that's the copper oxide in it.
I love paua. Paua is delicious.
Yeah, and again, your subconscious is probably saying, Cam, I need more copper. Now, if we go to another, so I'm going to go to another website. These are all available on my website, garymoller.com. And you can find like the citrus recipe on garymoller.com. And I've just updated that this morning to be a little more user-friendly. Now, if we look at, for example, copper, and copper in Cam's case is very, very low. Now, we look at the functions of copper, and it says structure of blood vessels, aorta, and heart muscle. It is also necessary for hemoglobin, oxygen transport and storage. It is also necessary for the maintenance of the myelin sheath. If there is a copper deficiency or a copper excess, by the way, then the myelin sheath will be weak, which means that a person with weak myelin may be very prone to conditions like concussion, and fail to recover from a brain injury. Now, the structure of blood vessels. Now, just think about this. If you want to stop blood vessels from bursting and breaking, you need copper, but you also need zinc with it. So when we look at your hair tissue test, we go to zinc. Your zinc is 12 when it should be 20 to 24. Now, when we go and look at the roles and functions of zinc, which I'm going to do now, Cam and I have the benefit in that we're looking at this on a screen, but so I'm going to keep describing this for the listeners. Now, first of all, you will see, again, the foods that are high. And these are foods when people are going heart healthy, following the now out-of-date heart healthy guidelines. You're cutting out the very foods. So oysters, herrings, beef, lamb, pork, liver. Those are the main ones that are great sources of zinc. Of course, zinc is found in nuts and seeds and so on, but it's not so bioavailable. The benefit of an animal is that they will eat vast volumes of these things and concentrate these nutrients for you, a human being. Now, what you will see is, look at this. It is important for the maintenance of artery walls, all of your blood vessels and that, but also your intestinal walls, along with copper, So a lot of these things are really important for the functioning of the brain and so on and so on. And it is also essential for the production of the male hormones, which gives a person strength and fortitude, the willingness to go to their death without a quiver of fear. If somebody is lacking zinc, then there is a possibility, a likelihood that they can't produce the hormones and neurotransmitters to prevent conditions like anxiety and depression. Really important. Now, when we look at your hair tissue test, we can see you're lacking zinc and you're lacking copper. Straight away, two things which says your connective tissue is going to be weak. Now, for the last few months, you've been taking some supplementation which is providing some of these nutrients. So we're going to step it up now because we haven't really had a proper discussion on this, Cam.
No.
But guess what? What's good for your arteries is good for your hair, skin, and nails. And so if somebody is healthy, if they've got nice, strong arteries, if they've got a good, healthy digestive tract, well, why don't we look at their hair, skin, and nails? If somebody looks healthy, then they're probably healthy on the inside. And in fact, if somebody is not healthy on the inside, there's no way they can look healthy on the outside. So when I'm looking at you, Cam looks healthier. His skin looks better. So maybe he's healthier on the inside as well. And going by your reports, to me, it sounds like you are making progress. Oh, now, sorry, can we go back just one thing? Your blood pressures. What's been going on with your blood pressures? You've been obsessively monitoring them, and could you share that with the listeners?
Yeah, so, you have a regime, a schedule for people to monitor their blood pressure, and you can go and pick up a little wrist blood pressure monitor. Omron, I think, is the brand that I've got. It's a little one that clips onto your wrist. It takes 30 seconds to do a blood pressure test. You recommend doing blood pressure as soon as you wake up, then breakfast, then 10 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and then bed. So you're monitoring it throughout the day. Once you've got a few days under your belt, then you can, maybe every fifth day or whatever, just check it, see where you're going. But my blood pressure is pretty stable now. Definitely not anywhere near what it was like when I had my stroke. And, is sitting even after I've done a 5-kilometer walk and then had breakfast, my blood pressure is often around 120, 122, something like that, over 70.
Yeah.
So, I'm pretty happy with where the blood pressure is at. And that gives me an indication that maybe I need to now present all this information to my GP and say, right, what are we going to do about these blood pressure medications? Because they're artificially holding things low and it's not reaching a normal balance. And a normal balance is what we're after.
They may be. And I'll just point out that the wrist type blood pressure monitor, so long as my recommendation is that you use an Omron.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an Omron it's made by a company that supplies doctors, and it is accurate. It's within a few points of your doctor's blood pressure monitor. Wrist type 1 is convenient. You can carry it around with you and you can slip it onto your wrist at a moment's notice and do so discreetly and get real life readings. The thing about
they're only about $130 too, so they're not a lot of money.
They're lifesavers. They save lives. It's $130, extremely well spent. Every family should have one.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so you get these readings and you get a cluster of readings. There is the saying, excuse me for plagiarizing a little, but it is, one swallow does not make for a summer.
Mm-hmm.
One blood pressure reading at your doctor's surgery is not a diagnosis.
No.
You've got to have a whole flock of them before you can declare or make a conclusion. So that's why Cam has obsessively taken clusters of blood pressure so he can get a real-time record of how dynamic his blood pressure is. Now, a blood pressure of 120/80, plus or minus, 10 or so points up and down, which varies during the day on how stressed you are, whether you're exercising, whether you're sitting or standing, and so on. But 120/80. Hey, if it's 120/80, pop the corks, Cam. Okay, That's fantastic. Wonderful. Now, here's the next thing. I have found in many cases the body habituates to many of these blood pressure drugs. In other words, as the months turn into years, the blood pressure medication is not really doing much anyway. So this is what you need to do. Your blood pressure now, Cam, we've been able to demonstrate is consistently within extremely healthy, safe zones.
Yeah.
You haven't been getting any dangerous peaks and also dangerous lows. Look, blood pressure can be too low. They can be terrible as well. Okay, so you've got healthy blood pressure. So it really then begs the question: what would happen if Cam were to progressively titrate his blood pressure medications one at a time downwards. Now, while you're doing that, and you need to go and talk to your doctor and put this as a proposal. Here's the plan, okay? What you do, you go to your doctor and you say, politely, respectfully, I want to wean myself off all of my medications, but I want to do so responsibly and safely. I want to pick each drug in some kind of hierarchy, and I want to, over the next month, titrate that drug downwards. In other words, you might go from 2 pills to 1 pill per day, and then you get a razor and you chop that pill in half. Most of them are designed so you can break them in half.
Yep.
And you do that for another week. And while you're doing that, you must be actively monitoring your blood pressure with that convenient and accurate wrist-type blood pressure monitor. Okay? Yep. And what you're wanting to do is to keep the blood pressure within certain ranges that you've been able to be in over the last few months. In other words, 120/80, if it gets up to 140, 145 over, say, 95, then you'd start to be a bit concerned.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're staying within that range, then, it's all peachy creamy. Mm-hmm. And then you get it down, and you might even go to a quarter of a pill. You can even go down to a grain. And then when that's done, you then move on to the next drug. And then you titrate that downwards, and you go through that exercise of monitoring, and you just keep going. Now, you also keep stepping up the nutrition, the lifestyle-based strategies, which you keep bringing in underneath the medication. So what you are doing is you are progressively removing the need for the drugs.
Yeah.
Okay?
And the supplements.
The supplements, you're actually bumping them up while you're doing this.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you're getting those nutrients through your food and in a more bioavailable manner, rather than just taking some supplement pills or something like that.
Oh, look, supplements are supplements. They are supplementary to a good diet. If somebody is not attending to their diet and saying, Gary, give me a whole lot of supplements, I'll say, well, I'm not really happy about that. I would prefer that. So you have the wonderful dietary changes, which provide that concrete foundational base.
Yeah.
And then the supplements are supplementary. You put those on top because, and what the supplements do is that we know how big a dose is in each supplement. So it means that if we really have to give Cam extra copper, first of all, we want to make sure that he's got foods that have got copper in them, bioavailable copper. But during that loading period, we will bring in some extra bioavailable copper, and we know exactly how many milligrams we're giving. Mm-hmm. But the more important thing is that about 4 to 6 months after we do all of this, we repeat the hair tissue test so that we can see whether or not we're on track. We want to make sure that we don't overshoot, and we need to know whether or not we're undershooting. The other thing is, sometimes when you put things in, it brings other things out.
Yeah.
Mysteries are sometimes solved. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is quite fascinating. Now, can I just ask you, Cam?
Yeah.
Over the last year, prior to us having our first discussions on this, were you on a cholesterol-lowering diet? Were you restricting things like eggs, meat, those sorts of things?
No, I wouldn't say that I was.
Mm-hmm.
I usually have 2 to 3 eggs every morning, so that's a no on that. I wasn't restricting that.
Yes.
I have eaten a lot less red meat than I normally do because the last year I haven't had the time, for various different reasons to go hunting. I prefer my meat to be on the hoof naturally rather than I can't really buy meat from the supermarket because I just don't like it. So, I usually eat a lot of venison, and I'd finished eating the wild bull that took me 2 years to eat my way through. But, I got over 500 kilos of meat out of that bull. So it was the most delicious meat I've ever had. But, I need to add more red meat into my diet, and I need to be more mindful of that. And I've resorted to eating a lot of chicken because it's a lot cheaper, but also it's easier to prepare and get ready. I'm cooking for myself, so going out and buying big steaks and stuff like that, it hasn't been done. So it's not been a good diet, I'd imagine, but I've kept up things like eggs, and I hadn't actually had a lot of bacon either, but certainly not deliberately on a cholesterol lowering diet. And from my recent blood tests that I had, my cholesterol's quite low anyway. So it's not something.
Can you share what? Just give us the total cholesterol.
I'll just bring it up in my little app from the doctor. So my cholesterol was 3.0
yes, and that's
mmol
while on a cholesterol lowering drug.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So that's the total. Do you want the HDL and the LDL?
No, don't worry. We don't want to commit. We'll keep it simple at this point.
So 3.0.
3.0. Now, first of all, for listeners, I would urge you to go to my website, garymoller.com, scroll down the articles, several articles, to an article about the meat eater's angiogram, and read it carefully, and also spend an hour and a half listening to Professor Tim Noakes dispelling the cholesterol myth. It's very important that listeners get their heads around this whole confusing thing about cholesterol, triglycerides, and so on, the connection between cardiovascular health and carbohydrate consumption and so on. We could do a whole session on this, but rather than us delving into that right now, I want people to listen to Professor Tim Noakes, who, by the way, I've been following for about 40 years. He is probably the most published exercise physiologist on the planet. He's the man. Go and listen to him. And that will help to allay people's fears that eating like Cam's venison and so on, that it's going to kill them. It isn't. It's actually a heart-healthy diet when you think about it. Now, here's the really interesting thing. I'm into my 51st year of studying or full-time work in health. Now, it started off that a total cholesterol of 6.5 was sort of kind of acceptable. If you're a bit above that, the doc would say, oh, it's getting a bit high, Gary. And then it got lowered down to like 5.5, and then it got lowered down to 5, and then it keeps going down. And it's now the guidelines for cholesterol have been lowered so low, it's like nobody over the age of 50 can possibly achieve it without medication. So you've got all these old men and old women trying to do the limbo. Okay?
Yeah.
How low can you go? And they're trying to go, they're going lower and lower and lower, and it's impossible. It can't be done without medication. But here's the other thing, and Professor Noakes will help to allay your fears on this. Guess what? People with high cholesterol live longer. Okay? There's less dementia and so on. Your brain is 60% fat, cholesterol, and so on. If you put somebody on a cholesterol-free diet or give them drugs that block or interfere cholesterol, you are driving the Alzheimer's and dementia epidemic. Don't worry, Cam, you're not showing any signs of it yet.
No.
Okay? But there's a number of, we're talking about side effects. Statins, except for where there is clearly a rare genetic disorder involving cholesterol, I don't think anybody should be on statins, especially if they want to be physically active.
So is that the first thing that I should go and talk to my GP
Yes.
about?
And by the way, there is no side effect, rebound effect from stopping taking a statin.
So what that means, what does that mean? Does that mean you can stop taking it immediately and you don't
Yes.
need to reduce
Yes.
it slowly over time?
And no, there's no problem at all. It's a little bit different with the blood pressure medications, where you are better advised to do so progressively,
Yeah.
carefully, while monitoring. And in fact, if you want to bump up cholesterol, unhealthy triglycerides, and so on, go on a high carbohydrate diet.
No, thanks.
Well, I'm not. Well,
I've done that. Like high carbohydrate diet with bread and potatoes and
Yep.
all of those sorts of things. It just makes me feel bloated.
Yep.
And not in a good way. I even changed the type of bread that I do. I mean, I only have 2 slices of bread a day. That's it. 2
Yes.
slices, and it's an oat-based bread, not a wheat-based bread. Although there is wheat in it, but it's reduced.
You're as I said, you're a model patient. Congratulations.
And for those who want to know what sort of bread I eat, it's the Oatalicious bread. And I used to look down my nose at brown bread and think it was pretty average until I tasted Oatalicious, and I thought, wow, okay, I'm changing to this. So
Cam, if you were to ask me in 50 years, how many people have you come across who have an allergy or a physical intolerance to beef and lamb?
no one.
I can't think of a
Zero.
case. Zero. If you were to ask me eggs, fish, shellfish, dairy, then yes, there are, but relatively rare, but
And
increasing.
wheat.
Then if you white meat, fish and chicken and pork, rare cases. But then when you start moving into the plant realm, then you get the explosion of allergies and intolerances.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So if somebody has any issues with poor digestion, histamine reactions to things they eat and so on, one of the most beneficial first moves is to remove most, and in particular, the nightshades, many of the leafy greens, your cows and your spinaches and so on, and grains, just about every grain, and also nuts and seeds and that. If you eliminate those or vastly reduce them, then guess what? People tend to do better. It's a paradox. We're taught that, it's so wonderful to eat all of these lovely things, make your kale smoothies and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't really see that as in the real world. Okay.
No.
And by the way, people will say, yes, but we have to have the roughage. Well, I'll tell you what, you go and ask any parents of a newborn that's being breast or bottle fed, whether or not, the lack of kale and other vegetables and fiber and that causes constipation.
Well, kale's what cattle eat.
Well, we're
And even they don't
carnivores.
like it.
We're omnivores. We're the most versatile eaters, but what really sustains us is foods like meat, eggs, milk, cheese, and so on. Concentrated nutrients and energy.
Yeah.
We do not have the digestive systems of a cow.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore that. And
No.
also, we have got many thousands of years of adaptation to cooking, to fire. So we no longer produce certain enzymes because we rely on cooking. We've lost some of those enzymes. Yeah. So that's really quite an interesting thing. Now, I just want to go back to your hair tissue test. So, Cam, you are also very low in a little understood mineral called manganese, which is found in egg yolk and snails. I don't recommend that you go and eat lots of snails.
There's nothing wrong with snails. I like escargot, they're tasty.
Okay. Well, snails are not that available in New Zealand, but if you can find them, go for it. But snails, egg yolk, and then things like sunflower and avocados and olives and blueberries and so on. But the foods are relatively limited. And again, what we see when we're looking at the roles and functions of manganese, it's essential for the functioning of the brain.
Yeah.
It's essential for the integrity of connective tissue.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about arteries, veins, and so on, sure, the main focus of manganese is for things like tendons, ligaments, cartilage, and so on, for strong bone. But it also plays an important role, again, in any connective tissue, including veins and arteries.
Yep.
So here's another one where you are incredibly low. And the other thing about manganese is its role in the utilization of, or the metabolism of fat, proteins, and carbohydrates, including cholesterol.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you've got incredibly low manganese, then you are not going to be processing fats, carbohydrates, and proteins well.
Yeah.
Now, there is another mineral that you are also very low in, and that is chromium. Now,
so do I have to go and suck on toe bars or something like that?
Well, I don't recommend it. What I recommend is bioavailable chromium. And what you do is you eat food where the chromium has been made or put into a form that your body can properly utilize. Okay?
Yeah.
So chromium as a metal is incredibly toxic. So don't go and suck on a toe bar. Okay?
So we've got these deficiencies being shown here.
Yeah.
Is this catastrophic or can it be reversed?
Well, of course it's reversible.
Right. Well, this is exactly what I wanted you to say, of course. but
yeah.
Yeah. So we've got to look at getting these things into my diet through bioavailable methods.
Yes.
But also, is it possible that there's something that is causing these things to be retained inside the body and are not showing in the hair tests that are coming out in those tests? Is it possible that there's an organ that might be sucking all these nutrients up and not releasing them?
Well, first of all, minerals like chromium, magnesium, calcium, manganese, selenium, if you're under a lot of stress, whether that's physical, psychological, from infections, injuries, over-exercising, relationship breakups, all of these things, they all have the same draining effect on your reserves.
Right.
Okay, so as you go through this, you'll see a lot of these nutrients are used for energy production, for producing hormones, for producing structures like tendons, ligaments, and muscle and bone and brain and so on, but also neurotransmitters and hormones. Okay?
Yeah.
When you have heightened metabolism, like say somebody's going through an enormous amount of stress, these nutrients are mobilized from tissue stores, which might be, there may be storages in the kidneys, the liver, in your bones, and so on. They're brought into circulation so that they can be used for producing these stress hormones or neurotransmitters, or for tissue repair, and so on. And ultimately, some is lost through the bile, through circulation, through the hair, skin, and nails from shedding tissue, and so on. And the other thing is, often when people are under enormous stress, they eat crap food. Okay,
because it's easy, it's available. They just shovel it in their face as quick as they can.
Yeah. The perfect stress food is a burger and chips, or potato chips, or a block of chocolate. Okay. And these are energy dense but nutrient poor. So when people are stressed and exhausted, they tend, or even just think of the marathon runner, hey, they'll have the pasta party. They eat gels and energy drinks and so on and so on. And these provide sugar hits and so on. Just remember that pasta. Once it hits your saliva, it's converted from starch into glucose.
Yeah.
And by the way, excess sugar, if it's not burned immediately by the body,
Stored as fat.
yes, and if glycogen levels are full, if the liver's full, then it gets turned into fat, and you end up with things like fatty liver disease. By the way, I've seen fatty liver disease in children as young as 10.
Yeah.
Okay? It used to be an old man's or old woman's disease. Now we're seeing it in adolescent children, and it's the junk food, the carbohydrate-soaked diet.
Yeah. Now, when we got these tests,
Yes.
we had a little chat, I think it was for about half an hour or so, maybe even been an hour. The thing that you said to me that we should do immediately was to start making this citrus peel drink that you recommend.
Let's get on to that.
So, as I said, I've found it very tasty, very refreshing, and not at all unpleasant. And I'm not somebody who has normally eaten fruit and vegetables and things like that. I've sort of like, that's what cows eat, and I eat cows. But I've found this absolutely delightful to drink. In fact, I'm making up at least 3 or 4 jugs a week of this, right? So why did you recommend that I do that and all of the things you could? And again, just for listeners, if you do a Google search for Gary Moller citrus peel drink, it'll be the top thing on your Google search. Go there and it gives you the ingredients and all the instructions.
Yes, and I've just updated that this morning. So, well, first of all, prior to COVID, the lockdown, prior to the first lockdown, I attended 2 medical nutrition conferences. And at each one, there were papers presented on citrus peel.
Yeah.
Not lemon juice, but citrus peel. Okay. And it was mind-blowing. A doctor presented, for example, a case of a complete cure of terminal cancer from eating lemons. Okay. And there were also other discussions about the role of it, not just as for the prevention and treatment of cancer, but also for cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
Now, I came out of, in particular, I came out of the last one. It was a couple of days before the first lockdown. And I thought to myself, this should be the headline news. We should be urging all of New Zealand to go and raid their neighbour's lemon tree and have lemon citrus peel in their diets. Okay? But there was none. And what I realised, Cam, is the reason why there is so much research into citrus peel is because the rush is on to identify and synthesize the active ingredients to come out with the next billion-dollar cancer therapy drug or heart drug or whatever. Okay.
Or you can just go pinch lemons off the neighbour's tree and have this lemon drink and not have to pay Big Pharma for anything.
So during the lockdown, when I started to realize that there's some real dodgy stuff going on, I wrote my first citrus recipe. I thought, well, why should I play this silly game? I'm just going to put it out there for the public. Now, for listeners, I want you to do your research. I want you to go into Google, just Google citrus peel and type in your favorite disease. I want you to type in cancer. I want you to type in cardiovascular disease. Type in cardiomyopathy. Type in arteriosclerosis. Type in dementia, Alzheimer's. Okay, you can just do it. And I want you to scroll through there, and what it will do is it will blow you away. It'll be wow, wow, wow. This is amazing. Now, why doesn't your doctor prescribe any of this? You will notice as you do your research, that much of this is what your doctor should be reading and is presumably reading, okay? But your doctor will not prescribe it. Your doctor will only prescribe what is on the pharmac list of approved medicines, okay?
They're not allowed to prescribe anything else, are they?
Well, that one of the great disasters of the last 3 years, the COVID era, is that now I used to be the practitioner support for interclinical laboratories. So I worked for a good 10 years supporting doctors, nutritionists, naturopaths, and so on in the use and interpretation of hair tissue mineral analysis. I covered the whole country. I knew all the doctors that were practicing true integrative medicine. Now, many of them, if not most of them, have been fired, silenced, thrown out of the profession. Many of them have gone into retirement, handed back their practicing certificates, and so on. We've been decimated. We've lost most of those doctors. Okay, and if you don't believe me, just go to NZDSOS. Okay, Doctors Speaking Out with Science, and you will see some of the braver doctors that are not taking this outrage lying down. Now, getting back to the citrus, you will see that citrus peel is incredible. Citrus peel, if you've got parasites in your gut, I'll tell you what, Cam, you're going to have the cleanest gut in the.
Well, let me tell you something, right? And this is a little bit squeamish, but when I had, after I drank like almost like the first glass even of this, I have a big glass and scull it down.
Yeah.
I've got to say that it cleaned me right out. Right? Not in an unpleasant way, but in what I would describe as the heaviest the heaviest movements I've ever had. Right? And since then I've had no stomach trouble, no crook guts. And I eat a whole lot of different stuff, all dodgy kebabs and things like that occasionally. But I haven't had any crook guts or any gut issues since I've been starting to drink this drink.
I'm a keen gardener and I like making compost. One of the problems is that I don't have worms in my compost. And the reason why is because I'm putting citrus in. And worms do not like citrus. And if you just think about it, in the world of nature, bitter is an antiparasitic. If you look at the most potent antiparasitics, a good rule of thumb is that if it's bitter. So think of Swedish bitters, okay, that concoction for gut upsets and so on. If an animal has got a gut infection, they will go and eat bitter plants. Okay, so there's a good, if you think of like Artemisia, which is a herbal antiparasitic, which is effective against COVID, by the way, it is very bitter. Okay.
So you asked me to drink this drink and keep drinking it.
Yes.
And you did that because you wanted to straighten out my liver, didn't you?
Well, not just that, to clean your arteries, to keep your brain working so that you are coherent when you are hosting your radio programs and so on. The benefits go way beyond just keeping your liver nice and clean. But it's certainly, there were other ingredients like milk thistle and dandelion, and these do augment liver detoxification. And this is especially important for Cameron because he's on several medications which are toxic to the liver and kidneys. And so we want to support liver and kidney function. Now, shall we just get to potassium?
Yes.
Now, I should also just point out, I was going to say a little bit about chromium. One of the things that you can see, a common factor with a lot of these minerals in your hair tissue tests that are too low, they are integral to fat, glucose, and protein metabolism.
Yep.
So if you're wondering, if you've got an unhealthy cholesterol profile, maybe it's got something to do with this. You haven't got enough of these base nutrients that act as catalysts and so on to allow your body to properly use the nutrients, cholesterol and so on, that you're getting through your diet and which your liver makes 70% of anyway. Okay? So I think we should love your liver, support it. Now,
Right. Good.
one of the things as well about atorvastatin and these other drugs, even the antidepressant you're on, these are toxic to the kidneys.
Right.
Your kidneys are very delicate organs.
Yeah.
They are very easily damaged. Readers or listeners could get onto YouTube and just watch some videos about kidney function. Okay?
So this drink is going to help clear those up too. So it's going to help clear out the liver, help clear out the kidneys.
Yes. Kidney function, the filtration in that is a delicate interplay between the shifting of sodium and potassium ions across the membranes.
Yeah.
Now, if the kidneys are being clogged up by toxins, okay, metabolic byproducts from these drugs you're taking, then, and by the way, statins can have a direct effect on the kidneys, on kidney function. You may end up with an inability of your kidneys to maintain the potassium-sodium balance. And you will notice that diuretics work by manipulating potassium and sodium.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a connection there. Now, we can't be sure of the exact mechanism, but hey, if we can't figure out why on earth has Cameron got these very strange blood records of or blood levels of potassium, and he's got to keep taking this potassium supplement, then why don't we focus on the obvious, even if we don't fully understand it? Now, the question is, Cam, what would happen to your potassium levels as you titrate down these medications? I'm going to expect, hey, your body's just going to sort it out and it will normalize over time. And it may already have normalized. It appears that you have had an improvement, haven't you, with your potassium levels on what they have been in the past. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so I got a blood test on the 9th of January. It's a usual scheduled blood test. And my potassium was at 3.6, and the normal range is 3.5 to 5.2. Now, for the last 5 years, my potassium has never been in the normal range. Now, it's at the low end of the normal range, but the only thing that's changed between the test that I had in October and the test in January is that I've been taking your drink.
And some of those ingredients, in fact, all of those ingredients should be supportive of liver and kidney function.
Yeah.
Okay, so we won't take credit, but
well, it's a start.
I think it's an interesting thing to speculate on. And by the way, hey, what's the downside of doing these things?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's a little bit of a time issue in making up this drink. It's terrible. It takes about 5 minutes to make it. Yeah. And most of that's slicing the lemon up and biffing the tea bags into the mix. And so, if you don't make this drink up because you think, it takes too long, well, then you're just lazy. And the benefits of it, I've experienced a huge change. Now, there's another little ingredient in that might be particularly interesting to blokes, is that you've got this new cell in there, a liquid, which is essentially fulvic acid. Now, what does that do?
Well, it has a number of a wide range of benefits. And again, we could do a whole session on fulvic acid.
Just a quick overview on that.
Yes. It improves digestion. It nourishes a healthy gut bacteria. It helps the uptake, the transport of nutrients across the cell membrane.
Yep.
So when you take and it's rich in minerals and various other ingredients, but I think the most exciting thing about fulvic acid itself is that it facilitates the sucking or the transport of nutrients across the cell wall into the cell, but also the shifting of metabolic waste products out of the cell.
Yeah.
So you have all these wonderful nutrients that you're now adding to your diet. What we have to do is we need to transport those nutrients across the various cell compartments, body compartments, eventually to the cell wall, and then through the cell wall, and even a step further into the mitochondria. Okay, and fulvic acid facilitates that. So you could say that for the nutrients you're taking, fulvic acid gives you more bang for your bucks.
And for blokes, there's a number of studies out there that shows that it boosts testosterone.
Well, yes, it boosts, I would tell you, it boosts everything.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And it is argued that the purest fulvic acid comes from the deep south of New Zealand.
Yeah.
The fulvic acid that is on my website, you need to go to precisionhealthtesting.com.
Yep.
And you just type in fulvic and you will find it. And that is a New Zealand produced product, the purest, richest fulvic acid you'll get anywhere.
Yeah, and I just put a splash into the mixture. I just sort of like randomly splash a decent helping of it, and it doesn't taste bad. It doesn't taint the drink or anything.
Oh, it's lovely. It's delicious. I love it. And in fact, I had some fulvic acid in my lemon drink this morning.
Yeah.
It's refreshing. It's energizing.
So what we've seen from my test is that I'm low on a whole lot of things.
Yes.
That possibly my liver and kidneys, because of the medications I'm on, may not be working particularly well. And so that's why we started the citrus peel drink to clean that up.
There is one other thing which I need to discuss relevant, which is on this hair tissue test. Oh, well, there's two things. First of all, what we can say is that it appears that you have no toxins, okay, like lead, mercury, cadmium. There's tiny little bits, but, hey, that's normal. So let's put that aside. We don't have to worry about that at all. However, you will see one thing that is sticking up that we need to talk about, and that is phosphorus.
Oh, phosphorus.
The aluminium. Yeah, don't worry about the aluminium. We'll do a repeat test, and if the aluminium goes up, then we'll talk about it. If it goes down, we won't talk about it.
So we've got the phosphorus that's a skyscraper.
Yes, and it is too high.
Yeah.
You can say, but it's only a little bit above the reference or the ideal. But the trouble is, Cam,
it's affecting the selenium, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's sticking its head up above the general lie of the land. So you got really low. The potassium is a bit on the low side as well.
Yeah,
I think we've got that under control. So low iron, copper, manganese, zinc, chromium, very low selenium, which is another issue. But don't worry, we're dealing with that. But the phosphorus then goes boom up very high. Now, what's going on there? I will bring up, we'll again go to our mineral information. Listeners, we're just looking at a chart, and we're going to go to phosphorus. Now, phosphorus is the energy carrier within the cells. Okay? Think of the phosphorus match. Phosphorus is high energy. It is the atom which is used by your mitochondria, which are they're in every single cell, and they are the power generators. They're like the little the little hydroelectric power stations, okay,
Yeah.
which are generating energy. And the energy is in the form of what is called adenosine triphosphate, okay, ATP for short. And your mitochondria take a molecule called adenosine diphosphate, and it adds a few electrons and creates a high energy molecule called adenosine triphosphate. That then migrates around, and wherever an electron or two is required for energy production, it will donate that and it will degrade back down to adenosine diphosphate, and then it goes back to the mitochondria to be regenerated again to be a high energy molecule. Okay.
So how do we get that down?
Well, let's just talk about statins. Statins destroy mitochondria. Okay.
And doctors prescribe statins.
Yes, and you are on a statin.
Mm.
Okay. Now, what statins do is they destroy your hydroelectric power stations. Okay.
Yeah.
And the pattern for it, if we see that in action, we see phosphorus being high. Okay. That is not a good sign. It says to me, Cam Slater is bleeding phosphorus. The energy systems is being dismantled.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a Russian missile attack on your energy system. Okay.
Yeah.
Got the idea? Now,
Yep.
So when we're looking at it, and we go down and we look at the roles and functions of phosphorus, really important. You can see it's so much to do with energy production. Phosphorus is important for bone, okay, calcium phosphate, monobasic, dibasic, and tribasic for bone and teeth and so on. But it's so crucial for the production of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, okay? And when it is elevated on a hair tissue test, it is frequently indicative of excessive protein breakdown of body tissues, okay?
Yeah.
In your case, it is not due to toxic metals like lead or cadmium or arsenic, because your body is clean with that. So what else could it be? The most common that I've found is statin use.
Yeah.
Now, look up conditions like, just type into Google, statins and muscle breakdown. Statins, rhabdomyolysis, okay? And you will be shocked. You will understand that statins destroy muscle tissue. And muscle tissue, of course, is extremely rich in mitochondria. Okay? So there's a little bit of information for you, and we can see it on this. So our goal is to bring the phosphorus down in line with these other minerals and then march them like soldiers on parade up to the line.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, you've been in the army, haven't you?
I have.
Good. I was as well. And when you've got a ragtag bunch of soldiers, the sergeant has a hissy fit. Okay? If Gary Muller's got his foot over the line, okay, he will swear black and blue. Now, what do? You don't all put your foot on the line. What you have to do is you have to fall back. He'll yell fall back, and you fall back about a meter. You put hands on shoulders, and then you shuffle everybody forward.
Yeah.
What we've got to do is we've got to get that phosphorus and magnesium and a couple of other things. We've got to get them to fall back, and then we march them forward.
Yeah.
And that's what we are setting out to do. Okay. And by the way, I think you're doing it. We now need to do a repeat test in, say, 2 months from now.
Yep. So we do a repeat test in 2 months now. But what next steps would you suggest? Would you suggest I start doing your super smoothie and adding some things into that?
How much time have we got, Cam? Hey?
We've got a few minutes more. It's been very interesting. It always is interesting with you, Gary. But we've covered the test and the test results. We've covered what causes that. We've covered how we can cleanse the liver and the kidneys. So I guess a brief touch on the next steps. And then what we'll do in a couple of months' time is we'll have another update for everybody. And we'll say that this is what Cam's been doing. He's added in the super smoothie with these extra ingredients.
Okay.
So I think
Let's
if we
do this very quickly.
Yeah.
So Cam, I want listeners to basically go into my website, go into the blog, and you will see very close to the top the super smoothie recipe.
Yeah.
Right. What I'm trying to do, what I'm seeing as my role is to take all of this knowledge and package it up in a way that people can basically put it into use in their daily lives in a practical and affordable way. Yeah. And I don't want people to be basically reliant on extremely overpriced and harmful pharmaceuticals to stay alive. Okay.
Because so you're recommending foods and food groups and supplements that are highly bioavailable.
Yes. For thousands of years, we've been told, let food be thy medicine, body heal thyself. Now, the super smoothie recipe, you will see a number of ingredients. Now, I'm not recommending that you have all of the ingredients, but I have listed just about all of the important ones. Now, just about all of them are found in whey protein and foods like meat and eggs and dairy. However, in some cases, we want to fortify it so that we give you a really
extra
good
boost.
Oh, yeah, especially if there are health issues.
Yeah.
Now, let's think about depression, okay? You are on an antidepressant.
Yeah. Okay. And it's one of the hardest to come off, that one, by the way. I've had 2 goes at it, and it's quite difficult.
The trouble with, and we haven't got time to go into it, but it can, with an SSRI, if you've been on it for any period of time, the symptoms of withdrawal can persist for as long as a year or even more. Right? I think we can expedite that. But now I want listeners to go into Google again and type NAC or N-acetylcysteine, but just type NAC.
Yep.
NAC and the keywords like depression.
Yeah.
NAC depression. NAC anxiety.
Yeah.
NAC suicide ideation. That's a really good one. Okay. So think of all of those teenagers that want to kill themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Self-harming and so on. Now, what you will see is like, for example, Psychiatric Times, the magazines your psychiatrist is reading. Okay. And you will see a headline, NAC, the novel nutrient that turns psychiatry on its head, or something like that. You'll see that headline. I want you to
here's a headline: NAC as a novel, rapidly acting anti-suicidal agent.
Yes. So if somebody has got it in their heads, obsessive thoughts, I want to kill myself, or they've got, you know how you can get something in your head and you just can't.
Yeah, fixate on it. And
it's fixating and it's negative and it's horrible. Okay. NAC within if you give somebody a good dose of NAC, then within about an hour and a half, there is a clinically significant reduction in those suicidal thoughts or negative thoughts or self-harming thoughts. Okay. It's mind-blowing. Again, as you go through that, you will go, wow, this is amazing. Why didn't my doctor tell me? Okay. Now, I want you to then go and type NAC and COVID survival. Yeah. And what you will find is that NAC reduces COVID deaths by up to 80%.
Which is why NAC was attacked by Big Pharma during the COVID.
And yes, it is immensely more effective than the vaccine.
Yeah.
Now, if you then Google,
vaccine's a bit of a misnomer, really.
God, yeah. Oh, well.
But anyway, we won't get into that. Yeah. So you've got this super smoothie thing, and one of the ingredients there is NAC amongst a whole lot of others. So you're saying you can pick and choose some of these. Some will be more important for you depending on what you need. But NAC, you should include that, and it's you've got it, haven't you, as a powdered form, which makes it more readily. It's not a tablet or anything. You just mix it in with the whey powder and everything else.
Powders, as a rule of thumb, are always cheaper than the tableting. So that's the first thing. And look, you can do the same search. I want you to do the same search for taurine. Okay? And by the way, you can, with NAC, you can also type NAC FDA ban, and you'll see that the FDA is doing everything they can to ban it. And New Zealand has tried through the Therapeutic Products Act, which we must not allow to re-emerge.
No.
Now, but you can type taurine, and you can even type in taurine and heart failure. Okay, do that. Have a look. Now you will see, wow, this is incredible. Okay, now if you combine all of that with having your citrus peel drink, you are really covering, and you can type in taurine, Alzheimer's, taurine's nerve regeneration for peripheral neuropathy, and so on. Look, there's so much there. Where I can help is with whittling down what are the key ingredients, the most important ingredients for you. But the problem I've got is, especially with COVID, or should I say COVID prevention programs, is that we are so busy we can't cope with the workloads. The number of sick people out there has exploded, okay? But that is all the more reason why we've got to get this message out that the solution is by investing in the basics of health, which is what this whole discussion has been about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a journey, isn't it, that I'm on under your guidance and to eat better, to put better things into my body and get better health results, which will then reduce my need to rely on big pharma's well, I won't call them solutions because they're not. They're really Band-Aids.
Kim, let's be clear. You suffered a catastrophe.
Yeah, I did.
And that is when modern medicine is at its best, okay? They saved your life.
Yep.
Righto. However, where modern medicine is a complete and utter failure is when it comes to the prevention and the long-term restoration of health. Okay?
Yeah, and that's my focus. Is I want to repair the damage, and I want to mitigate this ever happening again. And the way to do that is to get everything in balance, which is why we're doing all of this.
I absolutely do not want listeners to think that this is anti-medicine.
No. This
is the best time in the history of humanity to be alive, because if you get it run over by a bus, if you have a out-of-control infection, or if you suffer a massive heart attack or stroke, this is the best time.
Yeah, and in my personal situation here, Gary, right, I needed some of these drugs.
Absolutely.
To keep me alive, but I'm out now at the point where I've got through the dangerous period.
Exactly.
And so now I can concentrate to slowly but surely be able to augment my system, my body, in such a way that I may be able to reduce or remove entirely the necessity for those drugs, because they're no longer going to keep me alive. It's actually my change in lifestyle that's keeping me alive.
Exactly. It is the where to now and for the next 55, 60 years of your life.
So you're going to send me a recipe of the things that I need to get, to go in with this whey protein. Yes. And then in a couple of months' time, we'll touch base again after we've done another test, and then it'll be interesting to see what happens from that.
You're going to be so incredibly healthy.
Good. That's what I want. And this is the thing that I've learned with my stroke journey, is that what listeners need to understand is if you have a stroke, there's no government support at all. There's no ACC. Unless it happened on a surgery table or as a result of an accident. right? You get nothing from the state. And to be frank, if you're relying on the state for your health, then that's not a good plan. So you have to rely on yourself, and you have to be self-motivated to learn the things that I'm learning and sharing with you all, and the things that Gary knows and he's sharing. And that's why we're doing this show, because it's not just politics. Because if I don't do these things, I'm not going to be around to commentate on politics in 20 years' time or 30 years' time. I'll have expired in an untimely way, and I know that my mere existence annoys some people, and I want to keep on annoying them for a good long time.
I think that's a really good note to finish on.
Yeah. And, we've talked, but the thing is, Gary, it's hugely fascinating, and learning all of this stuff makes you feel better. It certainly increases your brain power, your ability to think about complex things and all of those sorts of things. And, it's something that we will continue throughout the year to share with our listeners so that they can learn for themselves and start to take an interest in looking after yourself, because if nobody else has your best interests at heart, only you do. And that's why I'm sharing this, so that people can learn, so they don't end up like me, so they don't have a catastrophic failure in their brain or their heart or whatever.
Well said.
Because it's not pleasant, right? And let me tell you, a stroke doesn't hurt, right? It didn't hurt at all, right? What hurt was the frustration of essentially instantly becoming a cripple and being told by the medical professionals you'll never do something again. Now, that's a red rag to a bull for me, because I say never, right? And it motivated me to prove them wrong. And I've proved them wrong, and I'm continuing to prove them wrong, but I'm doing it in a studied, considerate way in conjunction with, I still talk to my GP about this. They know things that I don't know. I know things that they don't know. So between the 2 or 3 of us that are working on this with you, Gary, and my GP, we're going to solve this riddle. We're going to fix the potassium problem. I know we are eventually. And my health's going to be better, and you're going to be listening to me on Reality Check Radio for another 30 years. So, thanks for your time, Gary. It's been a great update to share those results and those tests with listeners. And, you and I'll touch base regularly offline about blood pressure, and you're going to give me a recipe for a protein shake that matches what my goals are and what I want to achieve. And then we'll see what it's like in a couple of months' time after I've done all of that. I mean, I may be bouncing around the room talking to you, but that's what we'll do, and we'll touch base. So I thank you for your time today and dealing with these complex issues in a simple and easy to understand manner.
You're a champion. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as always, Gary has a lot to say, but he always provides fascinating insights into health, and I've seen a huge improvement in my health since following his advice. I recommend seriously that you embark on your own health discovery and find out what works for you. No one cares more about your health than you. Tell me your thoughts on what Gary had to say by emailing inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
This is The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy, right here on RCR.
You've heard the words open, fair, both sides of the story. It's easy to say them, but practicing them often seems like a bridge too far. New Zealand, it's time for a reality check. RCR, Reality Check Radio. Rational discussion, common sense, and open debate for real. With me, Paul Brennan.
You know, you just can't make this stuff up. You couldn't write the script.
Veteran broadcaster Peter Williams.
Where is the evidence they actually make a difference? It turns out that was a very fair question to ask.
Taking on the mainstream, Chantel Baker.
Mainstream media, as usual, in their little perch.
The man who cares so much and whose background is for real, Rodney Hyde.
The doctors don't believe them. They can't get ACC. They can't work. They're told it's all in their head.
Along with a raft of contributors to inform, entertain, and bring the truth back to New Zealand media. It's time for a reality check, all right. RCR, Reality Check Radio at www.realitycheck.radio. We've arrived.
Now it's time for Cam's Buddies. This week, we'll find out what they think about Grant Robertson bailing out from Parliament, and it seems he's found another trough to snuffle at. Vice-Chancellor at the University of Otago. Like Jacinda Ardern, he's bailed out after wrecking the joint. My producer has them all lined up and ready to go. Let's see what Cam's Buddies think about Grant Robertson. Welcome to Cam's Buddies, Lindley. Good to have you back.
Hi, Cam. Are you well?
Oh, yes, box of birds. I've just finished an interview with Gary Moller talking about my health. So, well, you'll be right. That's right. Gary's looking after that very well. And, we had a good old chat. Everybody's going to enjoy listening to that.
Well, are you getting all your minerals tested?
Yes. I've done a test, and that's what we discussed. We had all the results of that, and there's some, let's say, deficiencies in, but Gary's on top of that, and we're working on supplements and proteins and all sorts of things. But anyway, we're here to talk about Grant Robertson tonight and how he's gone from one amply provided trough that has seen him expand himself quite substantially and cruised off into another trough at the University of Otago. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's funny you have said that because, well, first and foremost, he could not be my worst subject, and all will be revealed shortly. But my friend, the first thing she said was he's just exchanging one trough for another.
Dead right. Snuffling at the trough, like a little grunter pig.
Snuffling, yes. And as you know, I've said to you before that I have done caricatures in the past. Well, the sight of him, it's almost irresistible for the pencil, isn't it?
Well, I think you better send one to me, Lindley. We'll publish it on the RCR website and get people to see that caricature. I'm sure Marie Buskey wouldn't mind to see a caricature of Grant Robertson. But what is it with these politicians? Right. What is it with politicians? They never, like Ardern, right? They caused untold misery, harmed the economy, destroyed New Zealand society, and then they swan off to multi-million-dollar or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars salaried jobs that have been arranged for them. They never get to suffer any consequences. And we've got Grant Robertson doing the same.
I know, and my word for that is the untouchables. They're absolutely untouchable. They can wreak havoc on everything and anything, trample all over the people with no remorse whatsoever, and they just go on to greater things.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, Trevor Mallard ended up as an ambassador to Ireland. Now we've got Jacinda Ardern, who's got this, swanky jobs, and a big knighthood. Now we've got Grant Robertson doing this job, and it's amazing. I mean, he would have to be the worst finance minister in living history, and he's going to be in charge of a university that is already substantially in debt. It's incredible, really. Well,
it's the bull in the china shop. And, of course, that's my question, So is he the right person for the job, we have to ask, don't we? And the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Helen Nicholson, in outlining the perilous financial state of the university last May, she said, quote, It's panic stations. I forecast that hundreds of staff will be leaving in the next 18 months.
Yeah, well, that's the thing,
I'm
isn't it?
absolutely...
I mean, Otago
I'm on your
University is
side.
$203 million in debt. And now they think the guy who took government debt from $5 billion to $93 billion with nothing to show for it's their man. It's incredible.
Yes, it is incredible. But he's really proud of what he's done, and he's really proud of one achievement which absolutely fascinates me. He's really proud that he is the first, the first open gay Deputy Prime Minister.
What did he do?
Well, I couldn't give two hoots about his sexual orientation or whatever he gets up to behind closed doors. I want to know if a person's got the merit for the job.
Well, he doesn't, clearly. I mean, he's now got a job. He's now got a job where he'll be earning more than the Prime Minister. Right? He's reached the pinnacle in his career, and so therefore he can only go downhill after he wrecks another institution.
Yes. But I suppose it's a good thing because he might wreck it fairly fast. It does look like it's dying a long death, doesn't it? He might wreck it really fast. It'll be like humane euthanasia for pets,
I mean, the thing is he's likely to make them even more woke than they are, and we all know what happens when you go woke. You get broke.
Go woke, go broke.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just think it's absolutely, it's beyond belief.
Yeah, I suppose they've got one part right, though, in his job title. It's the vice part, isn't it?
Oh, well, that's true. That's true. Because, look, he's got no remorse. He's got no remorse for inflation being at a 32-year high when he left. He's got no remorse for a soaring cost of living crisis. And there were at times up to 600,000 people a month who relied on food charity. He's got no remorse for that. And he doesn't look like he's missed a meal.
No.
Does he?
He's a salad dodger.
He certainly is.
Yeah, I mean,
but the other thing...
Chris Hipkins is very skinny, and he's very skinny because Grant Robertson got all the sausage rolls.
Oh, is that what happened?
Well, you'd have to say that was the case, wouldn't you? Given the state of Grant Robertson, I mean, we're not allowed to talk about fat ladies, right? But we can talk about fat men.
Do. My mother always fat ladies.
My mother always used to tell me off when I wrote something about it. It's not over till the fat lady sings, and she'd say, "That's sexist." So I used to change it and say it's all not all over until the fat man sings.
No, well, you see, I'm the opposite of that scale. I'm tall and lean, and all my life, even now, when people should know better, I get skinny shamed.
Oh, do you?
And I've been called all sorts of things because they think they've got free license to do it. They think it's all right to tell people how skinny they are. I've been told, if I stood sideways on, I wouldn't cast a shadow, and I'd make a good pull through for a gun, and do I eat anything? And
at least you know what a pull through is, though. At least you know what a pull through is.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's a bonus.
I thought it was Daniel Boone's. Hello?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, you know what a pull through is, so that's good.
Yeah, well, I read Daniel Boone books,
Oh,
I know about those guns.
You sound like a stand-up lady, Lindley. You really are.
Well, all it did was make me stronger. Anyway, while I was waiting for you to come on the call, I've just written a very short little letter to Grant Robertson.
Oh, good. Are you going to read it out?
Could I read that out?
Absolutely. Go for it.
It's a little bit shocking, so brace yourself. So I've said here, he said, quote, "I don't regret saving lives and livelihoods during COVID, and I'm most proud of that." And I'm saying, well, Grant, if you're listening, you might like to know that due to your mob's policy of postponing surgery to support empty beds in hospitals, My spouse is now lying in the Belkhead Cemetery. That's his current address. A simple gallbladder operation left months too late, and he died in hospital 6 days afterwards. Like you, Grant, he gave everything he had, but there was no way back for him, unlike you. And no, he never got a cent from you for it, but you remained proud. And I think that sums them up.
That's very brave. It's very brave.
They're so distanced from reality.
And,
that he could stand up there and say he's saved lives and he's proud of it.
I know.
I know.
It's appalling, and it's very brave of you to read that out, Lindley. And, I feel your pain.
Well, it just has to be addressed because there are thousands of people the same. There are people who missed cancer treatments, who couldn't get scans and all sorts of things, and they're not here now either.
No, it's awful. And there's people now that are suffering the consequences of their awful mandates as well, and nobody's prepared to address it, and we all know people like your husband or friends or family that have got appalling health outcomes, including death, and these politicians sit there and say how proud they are. They're actually criminals.
I've read Jacinda Ardern's talk about Grant Robertson that she's put on. I think it's on Facebook or something, one of those things. But she's, so sickly going on about how marvellous they all are and everything. I mean, they are totally removed from reality. And he says that his toughest time was during the protests. Well, it wasn't tough for him. He had all the comfort of either home or Parliament buildings, and he could sit up there and look down on those people. That wasn't tough.
He had all those strapping policemen in their uniforms that he could watch all day long. He would have enjoyed that. I just find them, I don't know what the other buddies will think, but I just find this absolutely beyond belief. Well, I mean, your views were rather personal and very strong, and, the listeners out there could hear that emotion. They could hear the emotion in my voice. I'm touched that you read that out.
Well, I think it has to be said. I've been waiting for a long time to be able to say that.
Well, I'm very happy to have given you that opportunity, Lindley.
Good.
All right. I better let you go so you can gather yourself together, and I need to do the same before the next call. That was very emotional.
It's real. It's reality. It's reality, and we're on Reality Check Radio. This is something that's real.
Yeah, that's perfect, and that's what we're here for, and it's important that these politicians know this, and I'm going to get the producer to trim out your little letter, and I'm going to get it sent to Grant Robertson, and we'll see.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll make sure he can hear it. He needs to hear it, and I'll even try and get a little shareable of that so we can put that on Facebook and Twitter and things like that, because I think these politicians need to know what the effects of their decisions were and the very personal harms that were caused by their actions.
They do, and thank you for that.
You're most welcome, Lindley, and we'll talk again next week.
Okay, thanks, Cam.
Thanks,
See you later. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Paul. Welcome to Cam's Buddies.
Good afternoon, Cam. How are you?
Fantastic. So how about that Grant Robertson, eh? He's quit Parliament and decided to go and get a job where he's paid more than the Prime Minister to run a university that is $203 million in debt.
Well, he knows a little bit about debt, so maybe that's one of his characteristics the characteristics that they were looking for. But what I think is interesting is, wasn't that one of the jobs that Chris Hipkins was saying a bit earlier was they were watching it because the pay was too high and it was way outside the scale. And I think if I remember rightly, they were over $500,000 wages for such a position back in 2017.
Yeah, it's $600,000. It's more than the Prime Minister.
Yes. I mean, those jobs, if you can get them, are pretty good. And I know that those universities seem pretty woke, so that they would like someone like the Finance Minister of Labour, or the finance spokesman for Labour, because Labour kind of leans down those ways. But it doesn't sound at all like jobs for the boys, so that's good.
He's got some skills, as you say, on debt. Now, Otago University's kind of small beer for him, $203 million in debt. Grant Robertson took government debt from $5 billion to $93 billion with nothing to show for it, and they've decided he's their man. So I guess we're going to see, Otago University's debt try and get at least close to $1 billion in short order.
Well, I'm thinking, how many students? I think they have something like 20,000 students and over 400 staff. Is it 4,000 staff? They've got huge amounts of staff there. So I'm not at all surprised that they've got that sort of debt. These sort of things, I just look and I shake my head, really. And is that an appointment that was happening prior to the new government, or did the new government sanction this?
Well, the university is responsible for their own hiring, but it's interesting you raise those numbers. I've just had a quick look of that. You'll find these mildly amusing. Academic staff at University of Otago, 1,744, and there's 2,246 of them as administrative staff. So they've got, more administrative staff than they have academic staff. But you're right, it's about 4,000 staff and about 21,000 students.
Yeah, because I remember thinking those numbers way back were just at odds with things, and I was thinking it was 4,000, but as I was saying it, I was thinking that sounds ridiculous. It's 1 in 5. So there's every 5 students you've got a staff member. I was thinking, no, it won't be that. I must have made a mistake by 10, so that's why I was thinking 400. But yeah, 4,000 staff. I mean, there must be something there that you could cull to try and save $1 if you're of a mind to. But you could probably employ more staff as well if you wanted to see how much you can blow the debt out by. Well,
I mean, that's ridiculous. There will be courses at Otago University that are of no use to man or beast, and they could probably save a lot of money by culling those. But, I think this looks like University of Otago is a make-work scheme for failed people in any other job, and they end up being teachers or supporting the teachers.
Exactly. And I think was Otago's specialty, was it the dentistry there? Was it medical people there? I think it might have been medical people that
I think it's both. I think it's both. Yeah, I think it's both dentists and medical school.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that they get many graduates through, because if you try and get a appointment at the doctor these days, you can't get in the next day or two. It's in the next week or 2 or 3. And so that then whatever ailment you have is either healed itself or it's killing you. So I look and I think there's something amiss if there's 1 in 4, so 1 admin for every 4 or 5 students, and then when at the end of it, there's no doctors that are around to help the general public anyway.
It seems ludicrous. It seems a ludicrous amount of money. I'm just looking up the stats. Their budget is $756 million per annum. $756 million.
Right.
It seems a lot of. That's
well,
a lot of.
You don't have to save much to actually get the thing back in the right colour of the ledger, but it depends on whether they've got a policy to try and see how much they can spend and blow the budget out by, or have a deficit by, and does that money take into account the return on investment of an asset? In other words, the price of the land and buildings they've got there, someone has ownership of that, and that's worth a lot of money as well. Because I look at many of these places, and I think that they don't live in the land of reality financially even in their financials, because they've got a whole lot of free stuff like the land, the buildings, whatever, and then they put a number in for them and put it in on one hand and take it out on the other, so it's really not the number. So often these things, when I look at the finances of any of the educational facilities that I've looked at in the past, it's quite hard to read the numbers because they
Well, they don't make sense from a business perspective, do they, at all?
No, not at all. And also, one of the things that any government funding that would be likely to be in the university, and I'm not talking about the extra students' fees, but if the government is funding any of this, they want the money to be spent on the students in the year that it was given.
Yeah.
So that they like to know that if they gave $1 million, that $1 million was spent on those students that it was lined up for. So you can't make a profit. But a 200 million deficit, not too many of us want those in our business. Having said that, with a $750,000 income, that's not inconsequential either. And who knows? I wouldn't have thought Grant's the man for the job, to be fair. I think you could find better people out of PwC or any of these other reasonably sized accounting firms that would bite your arm off to get a position that pays in the order of north of $500,000.
Yeah, I think Grant will sit there and go, $203 million debt? Let me at it. We'll see how big we can get that number. All right, Paul.
I say that's nothing.
Yeah, that's nothing. I'll show you debt. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? They never suffer any consequences. Anyway, Paul, I better go to Jack. He's waiting on the line, so I will say goodbye to you until next week, and we'll speak again.
Take care. Bye for now.
Hello, Jack. Welcome to Cam's Buddies.
Thank you, Cam. Hello.
So, Grant Robertson, eh?
I'm sorry about last week. This week I'll improve.
That's all right. You're an elderly man. You've got to have your rest every now and then. Don't let it happen again,
enough
though.
Of the old. It'll never happen again.
So Grant Robertson, he's gone from one trough to the next. He's now scored himself a job that pays higher than the Prime Minister. And he's gone to a university that's $203 million in debt, although he probably thinks that's chump change, really. And Otago University thinks he's the man for the job. What do you think?
I think he is the man for the job. I think he was the man for the job in the last Labor government. Unfortunately, he was surrounded by idiots. Just to name a few: Phil Twyford, Anaya Mahuta, Carmel Cepoloni, Willie Jackson. Do I need to go on? Well, I reckon he was fantastic. He steered a great ship. And you know what was best about him? He was always positive. Unlike our current two that are totally negative, which is really, really getting the country down. The Prime Minister, for example, has just come out with the most negative load of bull ever, and the whole country's going, oh, we're doomed. Well, it's like that in Air New Zealand, of course.
Yeah, the thing is with Grant Robertson is that he could act with glee when you're pushing the cash printers out the window and spraying vast swathes of cash into the economy, causing massive inflation. And of course, you can be gleeful when you're doing that.
Well, you may say that, but he navigated us through a very tough time. And say what you like, the Otago University people are not stupid. I mean, I believe that he had to be a doctor to be in that position. He's not a doctor, but he met the requirements. They know that he's a brilliant guy.
Oh, well, we'll have to beg to differ on that, but I guess that's why we have Cam's Buddies, so people can ring in and say cockamamie things, and the listeners will then write in and say, what sort of drugs is Jack taking? But that's fine. That's all good. Yeah, lots of them.
You can cut me off now if you like.
No, why would I do that? I enjoy talking to you, Jack.
No, I've got a lot of time for him.
Well, Grant Robertson said that he's especially proud of the work that he did during COVID, and he found that the time of the protest at Wellington was his most challenging time. Now, you've sort of covered off his COVID work, but what about that comment about the Wellington protest?
Well, forget all that. Imagine sort of being the Minister of Finance surrounded by a bunch of idiots in your own party, and then the Greens to top it off. I mean, to come through and try and appease everybody slightly and keep the ship running steadily, that's no mean feat. I reckon he did a great job, personally. You may recall last year you said, who would I have in a forthcoming election or parliament?
Yeah.
And I think at that time I said, well, look at Nicola Willis. What the hell does she know? And she's proven to be.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, she knows nothing.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. But I would have thought Michael Cullen was a better finance minister than Grant Robertson all day long.
Well, okay. Yeah, he was good too. Very good. But you see, I'm a Rob Muldoon fan. Yeah, that goes against the grain, doesn't it? And and Grant Robertson was compared with him today on the news.
Well, the thing with Rob Muldoon is he actually built things that we're using today to, the funny thing is that the very people who opposed Rob Muldoon, the values type people, the greenie type people, the left wing, they opposed all of the things like Think Big. And it's all of those projects that are powering their smugmobiles, their little electric cars that they drive around and are all funded by the power from those Think Big projects.
As I've said to you before, when I was an engineer on the Manapuri Power project, it broke my heart when they didn't complete it.
Yeah.
The biggest project of its type in the world, cut short by greenies voting against it at the last moment. Anyway, that's another story.
Probably some rare water snail that needed to be moved to a different lake.
People that have been to Australia lots of times but have never once, ever been to Manapuri.
It's a beautiful place.
I spent a couple of years there.
Oh, you know all about the mosquitoes then?
Flies, yep. I grew to love them. It was the only way you could cope.
Well, they're big enough to eat, aren't they? They're just like small chickens, really.
Yeah, if there was one exposed part of your body, you were covered head to foot, you thought, but then there'd be this black fur sitting somewhere. Like, oh, another unexposed part. Damn.
All right, so you're a big fan of Grant Robertson. You think he deserves that job? That's your opinion?
Do you think that the chancellors and others in Otago University are stupid?
Yeah, I do actually. But then I have an extreme disdain for academics in general. So maybe it's pathological with me. I just don't like them, and anything they do, I don't like either.
Yeah, well, I'm having said what I said, I'm going to be a hypocrite and kind of agree with you there.
All right, Jack, on that note, we'll say goodbye for tonight and we'll talk again next week.
Cheers.
Thank you. Welcome to Cam's Buddies, Jimmy. Good to have you back on the show.
G'day, Cam. How are you this week?
Perfect.
We're good?
Yeah, always good.
Good.
So how about Robbo, eh? Grant Robertson's got himself a cushy new job. What do you think about that?
I think it's a trougher going from one big trough to another big trough, mate.
It's like pigs squealing in delight. You can imagine it, can't you? Squeal like a little piggy.
He's gone to allegedly $630,000 salary.
It's more than the Prime Minister.
For someone who's failed and been voted out, to be awarded that job as a non-professor is just such a trough.
It just looks like Ardern, isn't it? Bolting after wrecking the joint, going to a cushy number with no consequences for your actions at all, not even a second of not earning any money.
No, and they've both gone to woke universities. It's just terrible.
What about
they don't have any scruples, these people.
Well, what about the situation of Otago University? They're 203 million plus in debt, and they've decided that the guy who increased our debt in New Zealand from 5 billion to 93 billion is the man for them.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think that's going to be his undoing because he will have to make cuts there. The university isn't the New Zealand Treasury and it doesn't have the funding and just can't borrow. You will have to make some cuts. There's no way.
He doesn't have the government printing presses anymore to vomit out vast swathes of cash.
He doesn't have the taxpayers in New Zealand backing his big decisions, and so he will have to make cuts. They will have to chop. And how's he going to do that? He doesn't know how to do that. So 2 or 3 years, the uni will be going to the government for a bailout, you think?
Well, I don't think it'll take that long.
Well, yeah, it's just, and also he was given the job without being a professor. So,
It's astonishing, isn't it?
They've shortcutted it for him.
It has to have been a cushy shoulder tap deal, isn't it? Were they advertising? I mean, was he the best candidate? Who were the other candidates? Why won't they tell us that? If they said there was a field of 57 eminently qualified people, but weren't, we like Robbo, so we're choosing him. That's what it looks like to me.
Well, that's what it is, isn't it? There's just no doubt about it. I mean, it's just all too, by not standing in a central Wellington seat, we knew he was going to chuck it in. He would have known about this and been waiting for a long time for this just to pop up.
That's what these list troffers do, isn't it?
Hey, it just proves that they're all troffers. They honestly are. Now, this week with Luxon cutting on welfare has been good. Good to see the squealing out there.
There'll be lots of squealing. The news media will go and find some little activists, people who will be a little bit sad that they might have to go and get a job.
But how can they morally say that they should just be allowed to sit there and get paid by other taxpayers and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it? How do they explain that away, Cam?
It's called sanctimony.
I've been seeing the outcries against Luxon and saying that he's just doesn't know and disconnected from the reality. But it's like some people have been on the job seeker for 13 years. Well, they're able to work and they just don't want to.
Maybe they think it's like hide and seek and they're taking the hide part literally and not doing the seeking part.
I don't know, but thank God the adults are back in charge. So yeah. So anyway, that's my thoughts on old Grant, mate.
Well,
if Hipkins goes, Labor's got no. What experience have they got in there?
Their talent pool is as shallow as a bird bath in summer.
I know. Willie Jackson would be the most experienced, just about, wouldn't he?
Oh, I hope he gets that. Wouldn't that be awesome if he was the leader? Hey?
That would be amazing, eh?
That would make my day. It would make my day. He probably wouldn't like to. Wouldn't like me to share my text messages with him. It might become embarrassing.
Oh well, he's got I don't like his politics, but he's got a certain appeal to him. He's a bloody funny bugger, eh?
I like his front. Yeah, he's unashamed about what he's about, and I kind of like that. In politicians, that they're comfortable in their own skin. He gives as good as he gets. He tends not to get too precious about things.
And he gives people a fair go. He just wants his own trough. But when he had his radio show, and you used to appear on his radio show, remember?
I did.
He was bloody funny. He'd give callers heaps of give them heaps of stick. Eh?
I always thought he did a reasonable job, and he always gave me a fair suck of the salve, so to speak. And I enjoyed going.
To say, Cameron's okay. He's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I like Willie. He gave me a go. I'm prepared to give him a go. But it's politics, so you got to take the rough with the tumble. And he's not too bad. I actually quite like Willie. I think he's racist, but I'm entitled to say that. I hope he does step up. There's nobody else in Labor that's any good. I mean, they're all just a bunch of hopeless.
What's your thoughts on McAnulty?
I think he's dodgier than a 2-bob watch.
He's a self-declared socialist.
Yeah.
But
he'd be a Chardonnay socialist.
Leader.
He'd be a Chardonnay socialist for sure.
But they all are.
Yeah.
Well, he's touted as the next leader. So once Hipkins goes, which is, potentially coming around, then how does Labor rebuild from this?
Well, every political party has to do this. National had to go through it. there'll be a few coups, there'll be a few spills, there'll be, a few people who make stuff-ups. It's all entertaining, and it just makes great radio for me. So, I don't actually want them to get themselves sorted out. I want to see carnage, and, I want to see – politics is a blood sport, and I want to see lots of blood.
Yeah, well, you did right, but I always believe that governments always need opposition, and a decent opposition. That's the whole point of it. And Hipkins is useless at opposition. And, we don't want Luxon getting too big. We want him to keep thinking hard about his decisions.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Grant's gone, mate. That's another win.
It is. It is another one. It'll be fantastic that he's gone. Hopefully he won't make any pronouncements like Helen Clark does or Jacinda Ardern does. He just disappears. We never hear from him again. And he just sits down there sits down there in Otago in Dunedin in the depths of winter eating pies and sausage rolls.
Okay, Cam. Thanks, mate.
All right, mate. Thanks for your call, and we'll talk next week. Welcome to Cam's Buddies. Miles, pleased to have you back on the show.
Good afternoon, Cam. It's great to be back. How are we today?
Yeah, good, mate. Good, mate. Everything's good. Every day above ground's a good day.
It's excellent.
So, Grant Robertson has quit Parliament, and he's got himself a job that pays more than the Prime Minister. What are your thoughts on that?
Are we referring to Grant Robertson in the role of Vice-Chancellor at Otago University by chance?
We are. That's the very one.
And is this trough so deep and wide that you could lose half of the poor people of South Auckland in it?
Probably. It's not quite as deep and as wide as the trough he's been supping from. Certainly doesn't have the ability to line up cash printing machines outside windows and spray vast quantities of New Zealand dollars into the economy. But this is what I can't work out, Miles, right? And I've put the same question to each of the buddies. I said, Otago University is $203 million in debt. They have 4,000 staff for 21,000 students. And of those 4,000 staff, about a third of them are actually teaching and the rest are administration staff. And they have an annual revenue of $750 million. So they've decided to pick the guy that took New Zealand's debt from $5 billion to $93 billion, and they're going to pay him more than the Prime Minister gets.
Look, I think it's a fantastic idea. Look at it this way: the Vice Chancellor, I have to be humble here, and I have submitted to the scourge of Google, and I have asked Google, what are the duties of a Vice Chancellor? And it came up with leadership, management, and development of the university and realisation of its strategic plan. Now, I thought this was quite interesting, so I decided, what are the qualities of a good Vice-Chancellor? Because of the topic of conversation, I think all of us have strong opinions about Grant Robertson, and I thought I would just tell you what Mr. Google says. Well, apparently, the qualities of a good Vice-Chancellor are exceptional ability across a wide range of working situations, together with the requisite degree of authority, integrity, financial probity, commercial acumen, and intellect. And I thought, well, there's a big fat raspberry blowing there, isn't there?
Sure is. He's got none of those skills at all.
So I began to reflect on Otago University and its debt and its amount of staff, and I thought, maybe it's not a university. Maybe it's actually a Labour Party nursery. And maybe we are, through all our generous donations as taxpayers are funding future Labour Party MPs and activists. And I thought to myself, maybe that's why Grant Robertson has gone down to Otago University.
Maybe recruitment of Labour members in Otago has fallen off significantly and he needs to correct that.
Maybe it is. But I certainly can't see him. Well, I wish him all the best, but really? I mean, it sounds to me like Otago University is in a precarious situation. And I'd just like to say the requisite degree of authority, integrity, financial probity and commercial acumen and intellect, well, I can tell you that if they're looking for that, I don't think that Grant Robertson would be the correct person for the job.
Yeah, I mean, Jack doesn't agree with you. He thinks he's wonderful, but, Jack took the vaccine, so, that kind of says everything. But
I'm sure he is wonderful, but at what? Tell me at what he's wonderful.
That's the thing, because, the way I'm looking at it from, I think he's the worst finance minister we've had in living memory, and that's really challenging Sir Robert Muldoon for that title. But I think Robertson easily beats him in that regard.
One wonders about Otago University. One wonders whether it's a fixed-term contract with Robertson. I doubt it, but think of it this way. What sort of wreckage of Otago University as it is now, and let's be honest, Otago University's financial status now is what I would describe as grim. I mean, it's hanging on by its teeth, and we're seeing a whole lot of pro-vax nutters come out of Otago, not to mention the anti-smoking nutters that come out of Otago. All of these types of activism, really, I mean, Otago University is staggering, I think, and people are asking the question, why should I go to Otago? And I don't think Grant Robertson will have the answer to that question.
No, I don't think he will at all. I don't think he's got any answers for anything other than, I'm sure we could increase our borrowings.
Look, there's no doubt that Otago has been a stellar institution in the past. But sadly, I have to say that the respect I have for the university academic system these days is beyond low. I'm very, very disappointed with what the universities are getting up to, and I'm beginning to think that they have lost the plot and have become left-wing propaganda organs.
I think that happened quite some time ago, Miles.
Maybe you're right. I'm not known for keeping tabs on universities, but, in my day, Otago University and going down to Otago was the making of many young people, and certainly doctors from Otago University were well respected and looked up to in any country in the world. And I could say that of a number of courses, but I'm beginning to seriously wonder about Otago University these days. And seriously, Grant Robertson, I believe, will not inspire confidence in the largely conservative catchment that Otago University services.
And I would tend to agree with you on that. And I think he's not qualified in even the remotest sense for the job. It has to have been a jobs for the boys. It's who you know, not what you know. And but on the plus side, I guess we never have to see him bloviating in the Parliament ever again.
Thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for that. And on a personal note, Dunedin is quite a cold city in the winter. And for me personally, I can't stand the winters in Dunedin. And I just wonder how long Grant Robertson will stand them. Or maybe he'll have 6 months off every year in a sunny clime.
Well, I'm sure at $630,000 or whatever it is, he'll be spending a lot of time in tropical.
Good Lord! Did you just say $630,000?
Yeah, he gets paid more than the Prime Minister.
630.
Yep.
Good Lord! I think I'm going to have a glass of wine and a sit down.
I think you better. You may as well get crack into that now.
I didn't realise it was so much. It's laughable. I'm sorry. That's laughable.
Yep, $630,000. That's what the Vice-Chancellor of Otago University, $203 million in debt, right? 4,000 staff for 21,000 students. That's what you get paid.
The poor schmucks. That's all I can say.
Totally. Anyway, Miles, that's your thoughts on Grant Robertson, and hopefully we'll have a more convivial topic to talk about next week.
Yes. Thank you very much, Cam, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks, Miles. Wow, wasn't Lindley's letter to Grant Robertson moving? It certainly cracked me, and I might have even had a little tear coming out of my eyes. They're leaking for sure. I'm so blessed to have such a great bunch of mates, and Lindley is the new buddy, and it's amazing the things she comes up with. They're all so wise and speak common sense, except maybe Jack's been on the sauce. Not sure. I'll check. Tell us your thoughts on Cam's buddies by emailing inbox@realitycheck.radio or text to 2057.
Thanks for tuning in to RCR, Reality Check Radio. If you like what you're listening to, or even if you don't agree with what you're listening to, then get in touch with us now. You can text us with your message to 2057, that's 2057. Or if you'd rather email us, you can at inbox@realitycheck.radio. We would love to hear from you, so get in touch with us now.
Time for the mailbag. And we've got a little bit in the mailbag this week. I'm surprised we didn't have more, to be fair, but hey, it is what it is. First up, some general feedback and some questions. Andrew writes, "Hi Cam, is it true that Maori seats were initially brought in to encourage Maori participation in the election process and they were intended to be a temporary measure?" Andrew, you're 100% correct. They were originally brought in for that exact purpose, and it was only ever supposed to be temporary. And in fact, when we had the Royal Commission looking at the implementation of MMP and bringing that in, there was a recommendation of the Royal Commission that the Maori seats be abolished with the implementation of MMP. That didn't happen, and so we're stuck with them. Now, Chris writes in and says, "Hi Cam, love your show. Hope you can help me with some info. I'd like to know who was on the wedding invitation list for the ex-Prime Minister. Mike and I are very disappointed that we didn't get an invite. Clark took one for the team." Well, Chris, I have no idea who was on the wedding invitation list other than, various different Labour Party hacks like Christopher Hipkins and Grant Robertson and various other associated people. I didn't get an invite. I don't know why. I would have thought, given how much I'd written about Jacinda Ardern, that she would have taken kindly and invited me. But, I think you're right. Clark's taken one for the team. Now, regarding my Kirsten Murfitt interview, and these come in from Facebook. Love Kirsten Murfitt, legend from Constance. Nick says, "Go Kirsten, we're with you all the way." Natalie says, "What a legend." And Fiona says, "Another great interview." And now for my interview with Maurice Williamson. Mike says, "I only have one comment for Maurice. Why do you live in Auckland?" Actually, you as well, Cam. Us non-Aucklanders will never get it. Kirsten has the right idea. Live away from Auckland. Have a life without Auckland City Council. Think everyone in Auckland has been complaining about the council since the 70s. And we non-Aucklanders are getting sick of it. How about a new subject? We've done Auckland City Council enough on this show. Well, Mike, this is my show, and I live in Auckland. And there's, half of the population in New Zealand lives north of Taupo. So we have to go where the population goes, and there's a lot of issues in Auckland. So we'll keep covering Auckland issues. But we won't shove it down everybody's throat every show. Anonymous comment here says, how come Morris doesn't know about Agenda 2030 that's running as council? He must know the bicycle lanes across Auckland are for driving the country to rack and ruin. And another anonymous comment says, just listen to your chat with Morris Williamson. What a breath of fresh air. Hearing some sane descriptions of what's needed in transport, plus A+ for your interview style that lets the speaker clearly air their views. Well, thank you. And Jeremy writes, hi, really enjoyed this interview. Funny, informative, and gives me hope there are people in public life who have a grip on reality and who show a reluctance to spend other people's money on vanity and or projects with impossible goals. And some comments from Facebook on the same interview. Bruce writes, there aren't many bureaucracies where amalgamation has ever delivered savings in staff, resources, or structural efficiencies. And Charmaine says, great interview. I like his common sense ideas. Houses in flood-prone areas built on stilts like overseas is sensible and doable in New Zealand. I hope the government is carefully reviewing the unused cycling areas which are monopolising space the vehicles need instead. And Andrew writes, I remember Morris going on about the rationale of selling Auckland Airport based on its value, based on simple revenue. It was not making money, so should be sold. It's too basic. Te Papa should be sold on that reasoning. It loses heaps because it's free to the public. Real value is measured in social utility as well as monetary returns. Selling monopoly structures can lead to massive price gouging to the public, which should be factored in. And now some comments about my buddies. Hi, Cam and Linley. It sounds like the self-checkout system is the failure. If there was no self-checkout, then these trolley loads of thieved goods wouldn't be able to be taken. And that was from Wendy. Anonymous comment here. I'm not buying the excuse of crime prevention re-supermarkets. Shutting the self-checkouts and replacing with staff checkouts would have a much bigger effect. Nudge principles in play here, I believe. And Beth says, love your buddies. What a hoot. Great job, Cam. And Ruth says, Cam, I wonder if anyone will walk into supermarkets backwards to avoid the facial recognition cameras. And Chris adds, I've listened to the replay on supermarket cameras. If supermarkets and the police can't or won't do anything to stop thieving, what the hell is a camera going to do? It's the same as a number of years ago when there was an increase in dog attacks in the country. The Muppets decided to microchip all dogs to stop them from chewing people. It was solely a money-making scheme. No one on your show has explained how cameras are going to stop the problem. Why aren't the police manning up and doing their job, or is it better to target motorists? Way easier. As you're aware, the police are as corrupt as our politicians. And Liz says, oh my gosh, Linley, you knocked it out of the park. Loved your wit and humour. What a great find you are. And that's the mailbag for this week.
This is The Crunch with Cam Slater. Conversations with a side of controversy, right here on RCR.
That's it for The Crunch this week. The topics we've explored so far are just the tip of the iceberg. This year is going to be massive politically. We've got the new government making inroads on delivering their promises, and the squealing is weapons grade. Plus, of course, there's the big game in world politics, the US elections in November. And despite the lawfare against him, Donald Trump is clearly winning the Republican nomination hands down. Poor old Joe Biden is looking increasingly feeble. He won't be able to hide in his basement this election like he did last. And I'm really enjoying my chats with Gary Moller, such a depth of knowledge, and the bonus is that my health has never been better. I love sharing this journey with you, and I hope that it inspires you to look after yourself better as well. Now, if you're using the RCR app, it's very easy to get all the replays of The Crunch as well as listen live to all the other shows. And it wouldn't be a show if I didn't have an amazing team from my producer to the editors to help put all of this show together and make it all work. It's been a real pleasure having you all back again this week. I love your feedback, and I'm really enjoying talking to so many different people, sharing their thoughts on politics, life, and yes, even health, and everything in between, of course. So a big shout out to all of you, and thank you for listening and having faith in me as we continue to explore this beautiful game of politics. Don't forget, email suggestions to inbox@realitycheck.radio for people for me to interview. And let's make this the show, the best political show in New Zealand. Looking forward to having you join me again next week for The Crunch with Cam Slater.
You've been listening to The Crunch with Cam Slater. Remember, you can check out the replays for today's show on our website at www.realitycheck.radio/replays. Tune in every Thursday at 4 p.m. for more with Cam Slater, right here on RCR, Reality Check Radio.